Mornings in Pompeii always arrived softly. Before the sun fully rose, before the streets filled with the clamor of voices and footsteps, the city breathed in a quiet, steady rhythm. Stone walls still held the coolness of the night, and the narrow streets rested as if they, too, were still asleep. From distant ovens came the warm, inviting scent of freshly baked bread, and from the public fountains flowed water with a patient, unchanging sound. It was in this gentle hour that Julia woke. She lay still for a moment, simply listening. Her breath moved in and out, slow and natural. The room was dim, touched only by the pale light slipping through a small window high on the wall. The painted figures on the wall, scenes of myth and daily life, seemed almost alive in the half-shadows, their vibrant colors softened by time and the morning air. Calmly she rose, placing her feet on the cool stone floor. The sensation grounded her, pulling her fully into the present moment. She dressed in her simple tunic and with practiced ease, braided her long, dark hair. From the next room she heard the familiar sound of her mother rinsing fruit in a clay bowl. It was a sound of domestic peace, a sound that made Julia feel safe. "Good morning," she said quietly as she entered the room. Her mother turned and smiled, the same warm smile Julia had known and loved all her life. "The market opens early today," she replied, her voice gentle. "Will you come with me?" Julia nodded. She liked the market, but not for the boisterous energy it would have later in the day. She loved its early hours when everything moved slowly, deliberately. Walking beside her mother, she felt the deep comfort of their shared, easy silence. They stepped outside into the courtyard. The sky above was a pale, soft color, the kind of delicate hue that existed only for a short time each day. Just before the full dawn, in the distance, Mount Vesuvius stood, a familiar and imposing presence against the horizon. A thin, lazy line of smoke rose from its peak, as it so often did. It was a common sight, a part of the landscape. No one paid it much attention. The mountain had always been there, a quiet, watchful guardian over the city. As they walked through the waking streets, Julia noticed the rhythm of her own steps matching the rhythm of her breath. She felt the solid stone beneath her sandals, the cool morning air against her skin. The city was stirring, but gently, without any sense of urgency. At the market, vendors were just beginning to arrange their goods. Baskets of dark, rich olives and sweet figs were set out carefully. Bunches of grapes, still dewy from the morning, caught the light like clusters of small, precious jewels. Voices were low, unhurried. People greeted one another with simple nods and soft words. A baby slept soundly against its mother's chest. An old man leaned on his cane, moving with careful, measured steps. A deep sense of calm settled inside Julia. It felt as if time itself had slowed down, passing without anyone needing to mark its progress. But then the light began to change. The sky, which had been brightening, started to grow dimmer, slowly, as if someone were drawing a thin gray veil across the sun. A breeze passed through the market square, cooler than it should have been. Julia looked up. Clouds had gathered overhead, thicker now, heavier. Still, there was no panic, no alarm. The human brain, when surrounded by familiarity, does not rush toward fear. Her mother continued to choose vegetables, her focus on comparing their shapes and colors. "Perhaps the weather will change," she said mildly, her voice even. Julia agreed, though a quiet, unfamiliar feeling stirred in her chest. It wasn't panic, not yet. It wasn't even fear, it was just a heightened awareness, a sense that something was shifting. She breathed through it, allowing the feeling to exist without letting it take hold. Then the ground trembled. It was subtle at first, a brief shiver that ran beneath their feet. Birds in the nearby trees paused their songs for a heartbeat, then continued as if nothing had happened. People exchanged brief, questioning glances, shrugged, and returned to their tasks. Pompeii knew small tremors. They were a part of life. Life went on, but the sky continued to darken. They decided it was time to return home. The streets were fuller now. the gentle morning flow replaced by a more directional movement. Footsteps echoed softly against the stone walls. The air itself felt heavier, thicker. Ash had not yet begun to fall, but something invisible, something in the very atmosphere, had changed. Another tremor came, longer this time, more insistent. Julia stumbled and her mother's hand closed firmly around her arm. A steadying presence. That single touch was an anchor. The human nervous system remembers safety through contact, and Julia felt her racing heart begin to slow, calmed by her mother's strength. But the crowd shifted suddenly, a wave of bodies moving with a new urgency. Hands slipped apart. In an instant, they were separated. Julia turned, her fingers grasping only empty air. "Mother," she called out. Her own voice sounded distant, swallowed by the dimming, heavy air. The sky had become a deep, ominous gray, and a fine, gritty dust began to float down like a strange mist. Shapes blurred, sounds softened, as if everything was being wrapped in thick cloth. Julia stood still for a moment. Instead of running blindly, she focused on her breath. In through her nose, out through her mouth. She felt the solid ground beneath her feet, real and unmoving for now. The initial wave of panic loosened its grip, replaced by a strange clarity. She began to move, not randomly, but with purpose, searching. Familiar buildings passed by like ghosts. A doorway where she had once laughed with her friends. A corner where she had fallen as a child and been lifted gently into her father's strong arms. Memories layered themselves over the present moment, a soothing balm for her anxious mind. The earth shook again, a violent, gut-wrenching lurch. This time, Julia was prepared. She braced herself against a wall and waited for the movement to pass. She noticed that water was still flowing from a nearby fountain, a steady, endless sound. She listened to it. It was a reminder that some things continued, even when the world was turning upside down. And then, at last, she saw them. Her parents stood near a sheltered corner, their faces etched with worry, calling her name. When their eyes met across the dusky space, everything else faded away. They rushed together and held one another tightly, not speaking, not needing to. In that embrace, their breaths slowed, their hearts found a shared rhythm. What followed remained unclear in Julia's memory for the rest of her life. It wasn't sharp or frightening, but distant, like a dream half remembered upon waking. The day turned as dark as night. All sounds softened, muffled. Pompeii seemed to sink into a profound stillness, not with a violent scream, but with a quiet, final breath. The city was lost, but Julia lived. Years later, in another city, in another life, she often thought of that morning. She didn't remember it with terror, but with a deep, quiet understanding. Life, she had learned, was delicate. Every single moment existed briefly, and then it moved on. And so, every morning, she still woke early. She would watch the sunlight arrive slowly, painting the world new again. She listened to the sound of her own breath. She noticed the small, simple details, the way the air felt on her skin, the sound of water, the comfort of familiar, daily rhythms. And before beginning her day, she would always close her eyes and think to herself, "I am here now, and that is enough." With that thought, her body would relax, her mind would grow quiet, and the world would feel gentle again, just as it had on that silent, fateful morning in Pompeii.